Welcome to Conscious Dominance, a DSRX studio production. These weekly conversations explore how to approach mindful leadership and inner dominance within the powerful container of committed, intentional relationships. Join Eric as he invites new dialogues, sharing practical insights for how the craft of consciousness opens the aperture to love, serve, and connect with unwavering presence.
I got it. Welcome to Conscious Dominance. Last week, I mentioned the fact that Rachel's with us. I said, please submit some questions. And then we also put it out there on Instagram. And I was really impressed with the questions that came through. And there were quite a number of them. But there was one that really got me. And so we're going to answer that question today. And then we're going to do a special thing throughout this next season where Rachel's going to come on and answer more questions. But for today, I just want to say that coming up is the 1-year anniversary of the Conscious Dominance podcast. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's been a part of this. And also to thank you to Andrew, who believed in me, believed in what I was doing with Rachel and our life and our relationship, and thought we should share it with the world. And we're each doing this and sharing our wisdom, our thoughts, our life, our vulnerability with the world. And excited again today to have Rachael with us. And we'll be weaving these questions throughout season 5. So if you're not already following us at DSRX Studio on Instagram, now's the time. That's where you're going to find future prompts and opportunities to be part of these conversations. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most misunderstood questions I've received. Why can't my man access the beast inside of him? I wanted to bring Rachael in with this because she has hosted my killer and my beast every day. Anytime I want to access it, it's there. It is there with passion, with a vigor, with a safety, with a vengeance. It's about the part of me that penetrates, that claims, that devours, that delivers. And also want to get into why for many men it's locked away. For many of us, it's not accessible. I think every single man, it's there. It's not like it doesn't exist. It's there and it can come out. And I think Rachael really will speak to her experience with me and with all men. She's had quite an experience with hosting the beast, not just in me, but in many men. And to me, as an animal whisperer, she's a masculine killer whisperer. She's very, very gifted at bringing out men's dominant sides, their powerful sexual killer instinct, and hosting that. It is one of her geniuses. And so I would love to have her speak about this, and then I'll speak about my perspective on this.
Thank you. I was trying to jump in that it isn't just men for whom this beast or this killer is part of. It is that part of us that is penetrative and that is containing and devouring and monstrous. It's also the part of all humans that is very expressive and unleashed and unhinged, where the unknown comes forth and where there is trepidation because we don't know what will happen. And not always is there a trust that beyond safety, that there is a way for that to come forth. And Erotic began as a way for people to come into a space, meaning a physical, four-walled, contained environment and a setting where it is invited that beast or the killer or the unleashed, unhinged, rage-filled, passionate, immense being, where we're outside of mind and we're very much in the primal animal body, something beyond human that gets to come play and also to be feral and We can't possibly be in the mind to do that. Oh, it so lives in the body. And we can talk about it, and we will, but where that lives in each person is so deeply in the experience of the physical. And it seemingly is fed by something so much more rich, like these streams coming through us that are quite energetic. And so I just wanted to set that up in general to speak to a nuance of the foundational layer of the conversation. I do want to say, though, that while that's foundationally human inside of us, when we talk about expression, and Eric has spoken so much about the feminine expression and that expressive quality, the way that we all can and do moan when we have a big bite of a juicy burger or a really wonderful orgasmic experience, whether it's sexual or just life force. Some way that we get to say, I love that. Oh, wow, I want more of it, that voracious quality of desire. To speak specifically to the part where this is about men and the masculine energetic, how this part of darkness in specific to masculine. So it can be like a different episode where we talk about this in the feminine, how the feminine isn't allowed to be so ravenous and so unleashed and killer and detrimental. There is a difference between this. I just want to honor that it is in all beings. But this part that we're specifically speaking to here about the masculine, where this darkness or this killer has gotten punished and questioned and has been feared and maybe has been destructive, but where this part of that body of his, that arousal of his, that desire, and the animalistic sides of that may have been shamed or shut down or muzzled. And that can be from people in our past, it can be from rumors, it can be from actual harm from our childhood, it can be from just society or a TV show that we took into our experience. That imprint is there and it lives in the body as a programming inside of each of us, where we, and men specifically, I notice, don't want to offer that kind of power. And I can even say that kind of physical volume of their voice, unless it's received, not just accepted, but like really adored and called forth. And an example that I also thought of, so I'll take it outside of a sexual realm, I will bounce between that. But I was at a fitness retreat, and the entire retreat is a high intensity practice, and it includes volume and what it is for us all to let out yells. We're familiar with that in a gym where there's a moment where people grunt or throw or cuss or move their energy through their voice. There's an incredible way that I was hearing this gentleman, a very smart, intelligent, sensitive person, reflect how uncomfortable he felt being in his expression because his voice is louder than everyone else's in the room, and it is fierce and it is masculine, and how specifically people in the room had come to him to say, hey, this particular voice is activating to me. And how he was like, oh, I had no idea that my volume and my tone could be in that way. So even something so simple as the way someone is expressing fitness, breath, could be so threatening or arousing to another person, perhaps, like it did me. And how that experience can be interpreted in such different ways. So again, this lives in the body, where his interpretation of that was to keep that muted and silent and to only reserve that for his garage gym.
I think we're setting up the dilemma, the challenge. And I think that there's a couple things here. One, just to reiterate, why a woman writing in asking, why can't my man access his animal instinct, his killer instinct? Let's just set the tone for a couple things. One, I think we have what Rachael, I want to piggyback off of what Rachael just said, where she said that There is something in our zeitgeist and in the generation right now that is very, very cautious, and maybe rightly so, of anything that exhibits unbridled expression of the masculine. I've had these experiences where I've been at the gym and I've been told to quiet down. I've been told to leave. I was at a gym and I was told I was too loud, no grunting. I've been told by other partners that I'm scary. I've also been loved in that and revered because of my capacity to access that. But I've never had anyone who so consistently invites me in and hosts my animal instinct as you have. And I just want to go back to the issue. I do think that there is a generation that is very cautious about that. And I think that there's also a lot of men have been shamed. The part of them that's their killer instinct, that is dangerous, that wants to kill. These men haven't befriended that part of them. They've seen that as a part of them that's negative. They've had often fathers or been around other men that have been bullies or harmful or narcissistic, and they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. They've said, okay, all of that is not to be accessed. This is the entire theme of this podcast, but I really want to honor that often these men are not accessing that, not because it's not there, but because they're scared of it in themselves. They haven't befriended it in themselves. And I think it's inner work in the masculine. Like, he needs to go do some inner work. And then Rachel's going to talk about some of the ways that she's an animal whisperer. She's a man whisperer. She can unleash it in men. And what is it, the inner work that she's done to be able to access that? But for me, the work that I've done is to really befriend the part of myself that loves to kill, befriend the part of myself that wants to be a dominant. It's to own it. It's to own it in myself. It's to own it here publicly. And it's to not be afraid of my dragon. It's not to be afraid of my sword. It's not to be afraid of my sexuality. It's not to be afraid of my cock and that energy and the piercing quality, to really own that. There's this saying, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And it's really to be able to be that part of ourself that is a warrior, that is a killer, and that loves to fuck and to just be in it. How do you own that side of yourself without letting that side of yourself take over? Well, that's what martial arts do. That's what all warriors that are trained in any sort of warrior discipline, the discipline of being a warrior is that. I'm saying the discipline of being a sexual warrior or sexual dominant is to embrace. You don't learn to be a killer by saying, hey, I'm not a killer. You learn by being a killer, to learn everything what it is to be a killer, and then check yourself and then use it only in appropriate ways. And when it's called upon, it's the same with our sexuality. When there's a space for it, when that's invited in, I can access it super easy because I have befriended that part of me. And it's not something that I've done with Rachel. I did it prior to her, but she's increased it within me. And it's also, there's a vulnerability in that too, because why I don't access that is a lot of grief over the fact that I haven't been able to access that, and that it hasn't been witnessed, it hasn't been seen, and I've betrayed that side of myself. And so in the unlocking of that, you can't unlock that without also simultaneously unlocking the unlived life, the grief of not accessing that. And I think often men are afraid to live it because it's confusing, because they might cry and they might feel really weak and they might feel really vulnerable. And it's a very vulnerable energy. And I'd love for Rachel to speak a little bit now about her capacity to host this.
Actually, before that, I want to ask a question for you to elaborate on something that you just shared that I think is really interesting. You just said that you did a lot of this work before you met me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to highlight that there's the intimacy that Eric and I teach at Arosha is first and always you with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it is that which you've cultivated and begin to trust more than ever before. There's no moment when we fully trust something and it's just done and we never have to think about it again. It's like you've trusted, you have cultivated. There's something here more comforting and familiar than ever before. And then as we bring that to practice, again, it's always going to be a raw moment, hopefully. These aren't scripted sexual encounters or physical encounters in any way. to bring that to be with others. That second side of intimacy is self with other. And I think that Eric could maybe speak a little bit to what it is that you did. You've said now many times that you really learned to trust that, to trust your dragons, as you said, to trust your demons, if you want to call them that, whatever you want to nickname that, the gremlins, but also to many men and many masculine energetics who are coming into the space, to let it be a familiar part of them and something that they are not afraid of. So I think you did do a lot of work prior to being in long-term intimate monogamous relationships. So speaking to that, and then how you brought that to me and how we got to play with that.
We fell in love when we first met because we shared, I think, both a conviction to spirituality and a commitment and a love of classic Dom sub relationships. And
BDSM and Tantra and the weaving of these many energies of dark and light, intensity and tenderness.
Exactly. I was obsessed with finding something out there that can say yes to my sexuality and yes to my killer part of me. Yes to my spirituality and yes to my lust. How can I reconcile the parts of myself that are opposites? And there was really this clear conviction that I had where I felt like I had to be a good boy all the time. And then there was this bad boy part of me, and the bad boy part of me had to live outside of my relationship. And there was good boy Eric and bad boy Eric. And I remember there was a coach that I was working with at the time, and she said, Eric, until you realize that the bad boy is actually more of the dominant part of you, and instead of trying to be good, just be Eric. And that might look bad. It might look wrong. It might look like all these things. Don't be afraid to be the bad boy and to own that.
Because if that is in your true nature, and even in this episode, we're claiming that, what if we borrow the perspective that it is half of the nature of all humans, and that the more we squish it or tame it or mute it, instead of inviting it in and giving it a place to hang out, just like a new puppy, that the new puppy, given reign of the entire house, is going to ruin most things you love. But if you bring that puppy in as a tender new being in life and give it a space that doesn't have small particles and doesn't have string that it may choke on, and actually has two toys that are beneficial, and we take care of it, there's a very different potential outcome that both that puppy and your relationship to that puppy has in store.
That's very timely. So, yeah, and I think what you're saying with that puppy is the same thing that you're saying with men. And I'm saying,
animal.
Yeah, we're an animal. And that the part of us that's the killer part, that's a really important part of it. That's a part of ourselves that's here. There is no protector if you don't have the killer part, and that's primal. And you feel that in me, and you want to be ravaged by that. It's eye-opening to read or be aware of women's erotica. They're never like, oh, we love the good boy who's just good all the time. It's always some Batman-like figure. I think he's literally like the most popular of all the superheroes, where there's this darkness. There's literally this ingrained, integrated darkness that is in the masculine. And the feminine is craving that, but they're craving that you can hold it, that you can have discipline around it. They're craving that you know how to wield your sword, and that you're a martial artist with it, that you have the craft of your darkness. That's what they want. But in order to get there, you got to first admit it. You first got to let it in the door. And I think it really helped me. Thank you to all the women before Rachael, who I was poor in my dominance and poor in that energy, but it was a learning curve. And I've talked about this on the podcast with Rachael too. There are times with her that it's been very humbling to realize what it is to keep an open heart. How do you access the killer and have an open heart and have discipline and hold that space? That's this trifecta. And that's when it really becomes this powerful sexual experience for the feminine, for her to receive and feel that full embodied thrust in that energy. It's been a very powerful experience to be in that frequency so often. And it feels godlike. And I think that's one of the things that's really interesting about this, is to feel into how I love the myths and the stories of the gods. It's part of why I love astrology, why I love reading about and hearing about these gods and these superheroes. They're never perfect. And there's always part of them that's unbridled, and it's learning how to access that, but then use it in the proper dosage at the proper time in the proper way. And that becomes the craft. That becomes the art. That becomes the skill. But you first have to be willing to do it at the wrong time and in the wrong way and do it poorly and be the fool. And I also want to speak to at some point, and maybe Rachel wants to say something, but orgasm is a part of this. Like Rachel, in order for me to access the animal instinct in me is to allow the primal. So often it's like men be in their holding of their orgasm, don't orgasm. There's no way to access the animal if all you're ever doing is restraining yourself and thinking about your grandma or all this other bullshit so as to not come. You have to be all in. You have to go for it. And you're going to just lose your load right away. And that's okay. Embrace the full throttle. Because once you can do that, then you can learn how to tone that down. But if you never go there, you're always going to be afraid of going there. And you'll never be able to integrate that and drive that. It's like driving a sports car. If you don't ever let yourself go really fast, you'll never be able to turn going fast. You'll never be able to slow and speed up. It's your capacity to move in and then move out that becomes a really powerful experience for her, and for you to read her, what she wants, when she wants it. And your capacity to move in and out like that is the weaving and is the tantra, because there's almost like a letting go that you have to do.
That part of you bringing unedited, fierce, loud orgasm, it has to do with sound and moving energy out of your body, and not editing that sound. It's ironic because it really does hop us into the other side. It flips the script a little bit, because what that is, also known as being reactive, which is everything we've said not to do. But it is in this moment to be in an unedited, unhinged moment of expression. So in order for one party to do that, the other party must be ready to and willing and able to host or hold or contain or be the soft, in my case, quite soft landing space for that to come into my experience. And when I come at him with my feedback and my experience and my desires and my wish and my wantings, I am ever increasingly not thinking about how he will contain that, how he will hold that, how he will feel in that moment. I'm just bringing it. And we kind of have a look sometimes. It's, is this okay? Is this okay that I'm bringing it this fiercely? And he's, yeah, come on, bring me more. And I'm just talking about what we're doing for breakfast. So that side of how I witness in my decade of experience with helping and listening to women talk about their sexual experience, there is much expression in the sexual realm. Women who may make noise, who may be going after it to get their orgasm, to achieve pleasure and get it. And we laugh because every single movie, every show we see where there's a sex scene, it's a woman on top in a fiercely aggressive sex, and the man just being like, oh, wow, here's this incredible animal on top of me. And so I think that that's an interesting part of the conversation, that if this man or dominant or partner isn't bringing that killer, is she operating the animalistic beast inside that relationship more often than not? And it's not to say that women can't be in that level of expression. In fact, that's so much of what we're saying. But in these moments, there's a special exchange, which we can call tantric, we can call shamanic, we can call cosmic. But really what it is a sacred weaving and an exchange where I feel very beast-like receiving that and being so comfortable in my own killer to see the killer in him, to say, you cannot scare me. I am just like you. I am equally as fierce. And in this moment, I'll let you tussle me, fuck me, own me. And as you bring that into my body, You cannot make me afraid. And there is an exchange. There's, as I said, even in our conversation, there's a wink or a knowing that we're saying, is this okay? Am I okay? Are we good? That's consent. And that's important. Whether you're in long-term monogamous partnership, there's a deep knowing and increasingly less and less words that are needed there, where our energy is synchronized. But as we're experimenting with this with first-time persons, there's something really special because that feminine energetic, in other words, the receptive, becomes the host. Just as we're bringing the energy of the receptive energy across the heart, there's a moment in that heart space where it turns from receptive into a out energy. And it is one big circuit. And so if we can see it less as I'm in this mode or this mode, and more that I'm in a circuit and we're passing that through, that we're inviting that energy, we're evoking, and we are inspiring and being a yes to that is not a performative wild, but is actually a deep trust while you bring that forward.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. You do this so well. You've done it, I know, with other men too. What is it that you're doing?
It's nuance.
It's
very
nuanced. It's nuanced, but you don't have, talk about expectations, because it,
Yeah, and I think also the competition. It's very hard often for people to see that they're trying to get the person to do the thing by doing the thing first. But it's almost like if we see that takes up space, there's only room. I don't know why this picture popped in my head, but I just pictured a very young toddler's puzzle, and how there's a spot for a square and a spot for a circle. And it's like only the circle can go in the circle hole. So there's not a competitive energy. So in an intimate exchange, in a sexual exchange with Eric, we're just feeling each other out and being in that moment. And then there may be weather that is quite obvious that one of us brings this, whether it's an audible growl or an inner growl, I hear that moment and I'm like, oh, it's present in the room. It is a moment where I can receive that and feel into my body and let the signal be that there's a yes, you're not going to break me. I'm not afraid. I want this.
It's a join and leave quality.
Certainly. But there is something so instinctual where that hit is there that it's like it bypasses any part of logic and planning. And so when we can get into a rhythm of sexual energy where that's so ingrained and can be allowed and available, and sometimes there's a technical thing like a position or the lighting, those are also allowed to be part of a human exchange. That it's no is often a moment to say no because this one detail would make this so much more pleasurable. So I feel there's a moment of expectation that most women don't like, of you're going to have pleasure, you're going to have an orgasm, you're going to have it in this way, in this position, that might even get women into a performative space that is inauthentic. So same thing goes in the other direction. If we're in a space of, I want my man to be rough or intense or bring his killer or bring his dark masculine or to bring the beast within, and I want to be devoured and I want to feel his immensity and intensity, that we're bringing that cherished outcome, we're bringing that expectation into the experience. And we can certainly communicate that, but if we're really in a space of surrender, and that fine line between where surrender becomes hosting and service becomes devotion, thank you, that there's a really special place of exchanges stirring in the cauldron or the soup, if you will. And so part of that is to bring the clarity that I want this, and also I'm ready and willing and able to invite it. And it might be so simple as saying, I love and crave your intensity. I'll let you know, because we may fear that the communication at that moment of, okay, that's a little too intense, that's a little too loud for my ears at this moment, but still bring that intensity, it might ruin the moment. It might sound like critique, but can we start to see it in a long-term experience of I'm bringing you in a dosage, that this person is bringing that fierceness in a runway forward. And I'm here to let that be something that I can receive or hold or host as I acclimate my body to that volume or that intensity. And I think that that's part of communication. Eric has said in previous episodes that he really trusts my yes because I have said no so often. And I trust that when I say no, I won't be rejected or abandoned or diminished in any way. That my no often, as I said a minute ago, means there's another condition that might make this way better for me and make this such a hell yes. And so the no's become a place always of slow down, be curious, and come forward. And so I would also say the same to this person who asked the question, that your partner's hesitation or reticence to bring that beast may be because we aren't leaning in with curiosity to be able to ask even energetically what may make this condition a little more comfortable for you. It may be as simple as consent and a conversation about physical discomfort and where that line is. And it's funny because Eric and I made safe words just in conversation because we can go to such activating spaces just with language. And so never mind with touch, never mind with sex, never mind with circumstance. It all is a place where it has the opportunity to trigger. And so how we have been able to communicate those layers of safety, but it really is just the stability and security of trust that we can communicate between us. And it might be a big window of trauma and even a moment to learn about our partner. It doesn't even have to be a sexual pain, although often it is.
You do something that I want you to speak about what you do, because you do it so beautifully. You don't expect it. You don't even want it. It's like hosting without expectation. Because I think so often men in these situations, the woman wants him to do it. They're like, how can we help you to do it? And they're eager and they want the man. And the man's like, fuck off. I'm not going to show up and be good for you. It's annoying. And you don't do that. What's the art of wanting someone to do something without letting them know that you want them to do it? You're facilitating. It's seduction. It's not a performance of seduction. It's just an energetic, like, you can be however you want to be. If you want to cry, cry. If you want to fuck me like an animal, if you want to just be sweet, be sweet. It's pure agendaless moment is what I feel from you. Do you realize that you do that? Is that conscious?
I just think immediately of nature and the impartiality in the way that divine neutrality can be. And what is it? I certainly don't feel neutrality in our erotic life or in that of my clients that I teach so much of this to. That it really is in the way that we can be able to be like it sounds so cheesy, but that the tree that you come sit next to, is it having an experience that is reactive to your screaming or to your orgasm or your experience of comfort in leaning on it or cuddling with it? I look to nature a lot to remember the part of me that is witness in the frequency of love or clarity or peace. That really is my job. We are tapping into divinity as we go outside of the ego of our sex. We go outside of the part that is Eric and Rachael, and we let a deeper part where the entire range of emotion is allowed and is encouraged, and where the entire range of physical expression is allowed in both of us. And in any given moment, maybe at the exact same moment, do we both get to collide in this way that brings such atomic levels of truth? Question mark, are there even words for this feeling and to these moments? It really is a spectacle. And I don't say that to sound like our sex is so epic and outrageous. It is, but it is not the way that sex is. Eric and I can have sex without any touching and without our clothes off, that energy is so potent. He put me in the car yesterday at lunch. He opened my door, I got in, and as he was closing the door with zero touch and just a look, I feel his beast on a holiday in a small, cute downtown where we are visiting right now. And there was such a moment of electricity that as soon as he got into the driver's seat, I invited him for a moment to experience how my physical body responds to that animal. I am a yes to the entire range of what this man is. I trust what he has to bring. I also, because he trusts himself, he knows what will hurt me, because we've gone to some of those levels, and I've used words to be able to assure that he knows that he is reaching or has reached a point where I need a pause, right? I might need a different kind of connection. And it is hard, I know, because I have a fierce animal inside of me too. And that he honors that, but doesn't expect it either. So as you talk about how awesome I am at expecting, you're not expecting my climax. You're not expecting my obedience. We're not living in expectation. If anything, we just expect for each other to be raw.
That's well said. And I think that something you've said, and it's something that we've talked a lot about, the best conscious doms out there are women. In order for women to succeed in this world, they have to be really in their masculine. And then they're also really in their feminine. And when they can weave those two together, that's when you get the conscious dom. To be a great lover is to have access to both, to have access to this energy that knows how to express and has access to yin and has access to sensitivity. And whether we call them masculine or feminine and when they overlap and whatnot, it gets a little too much in our head. You just know it when you're in it, when you're in that polarity and that feeling. And it's like I own all of me, and all of me feels like an animal. And that primal part of me and the primal part of you, we go there, and we go there regularly. And it's so therapeutic. It's so healing. It brings youth. I feel stronger. I feel more testosterone, more turn on, more all of the above. When we hosted in each other. And there were periods where I wasn't accessing it in the kind of fierce way that's such a turn on, but it was in the sensitivity and in the crying and in the shame and all those things. It's a very healing energy to express.
A lot about women or feminine partners who have orgasms that result in tears and how amazing that is. They're like, oh man, she cried after that. It's a moment of a swell, you know? And same. It's, there are shivers, there are shakes, there is an eruption, there are colors, psychedelics that happen, there are tears, there's drool, there's any number of things that the body can feel on the other side of that kind of moment of unleashed energy.
And to say it succinctly, if you can't host his tears, you can't host his animal, the fierce side, the killer side.
That doesn't mean that he isn't in the dominant role, or that he isn't in a place of strength or power. Can we get rid of that and see that it's actually in that moment where we are in it together, that we're in the cauldron of, if you want to call it healing, but I really love to think about it as repair. We are repairing. We are coming back to the pair, which is you with you. It is you with source, with God, with spirit, with universe. It is you with your partner. And that there's an immense, immense part of this that can be very recalibrating to know that this trust is being reawakened, and that exposure therapy, because there are in both of us wounds of being too much, being too expressive, being too dangerous in the wake of our truth. And so there's something really powerful to be able to bring our past stories into the light, which is where shame cannot continue to exist. And it's what Eric and I love very much. And so many of us, and so many of our listeners may be more curious about this. How does kink, which we can just define kink as a little curve in the straight line, so simple, but how kink can be so elevating to take something that was uncomfortable or where we developed a story or had something around it, not to rewrite, but more to rewire and to experience that in a way where there can be a replacement of a new energy, where we're really moving into the new vision of what we want, so that these places that we may perceive as wounds eventually can come into the safety and the creative laboratory of our bedroom, so to speak, and become some new platform that is ever evolving and changing and shifting as one or both of us are crashing into the soft landing space of curiosity, where we get to wonder what's going to happen next.
I kept thinking about when you're talking about yes and when there's an improvisation and in conversation and any good communication, but it's also in any good love relationship. If the person is speaking to you about their sexuality and their kink, or if they're in the bedroom with you, can you do yes and instead of yes but? Can you just keep the thing going? Can you keep it moving? Can that person feel like what they're bringing to you is allowed and there's no shame, and it's like you're just inviting that in? And I think you do that so beautifully. This is one of your gifts. You do this for a living. Like, you are extremely gifted at being a horse whisperer. It's unlocking the masculine men's animal in them, unlocking their power. You bring men into hosting them in their vulnerability and in their power, and their extreme power and their extreme strength doesn't scare you. They're killer, they're wild, all that. And neither does their weakness and their trepidation and their fears. That doesn't scare you either, because you can hold yourself. You're not needing them to hold you in that moment. And I think that's part of this. That's part of the work. Can I hold myself when I'm in that space? But where I've gone to a whole nother level is because you've been able to hold me in my low, 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 that I will give you my high, 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 or the most empowered version of me. She's a master at this. She's a fucking pro. She does it for people and for women. She's exquisite at helping men step into their power. Often we think you need a man to get a man into his power, but it's often the feminine who's able to hold him in his pain, that he then has a healing for all the feminine energy. Because often why men don't want to step into their powers, because they have a misogyny that's underneath everything. And if they step into their power, they're actually really going to do the hurting. And so they need a feminine to hold them often in their grief, in their power, in their strength, in their distraught. And Rachel's exquisite at that. Highly recommend her. I know I'm pious, but highly, highly recommend to all the men and women out there. This is Arosha. This is what she does. She is a channel of this energy. She holds and heals, and she does it somatically. She does it in person, and she does it over the phone and through movement and moving her body and helping men move it. She's helped me through the Arosha movement practice work through that part of me in my body, because it's stuck in the body.
And that's why sex is so powerful, because sex is an opportunity with a trusted partner or partners that we can bring that forward.
Mm-hmm.
So much of this podcast and our practice and a huge part of Eric's journey has been what it is for him to reset and re-experience the way that he is reacting. Mm-hmm. And so reactivity isn't in itself a dangerous practice. Mm-hmm. Reactivity, when it is unconscious and it is brought to and through the body without any sort of care or awareness, can be very harmful. But I am unaffected by Eric's reaction most of the time. And that's my work as a woman and as someone who receives him. That if and when he is in an expressive moment, meaning he is shifted over into feminine essence of unbridled raw, can I just witness that as a woman, like a tree? Can I just see him in that and hold that and be able to... Are we still recording? Can I be a tree? Can I be witnessing him and just hold steady as he does for me. How often do I bring fierce weather his way, and I see him just witnessing me. I see him loving me, and it is my greatest gift to be able to return that. Where that practice has come in handy is, of course, some of those reactions may be below the line, and to be able, I think it's helped to be a woman I love people so much, and I love men and the masculine so deeply, all of their stages of becoming. And there's something powerful to be able to bring that energy into a sexual exchange where it is a neutrality, it is a divinity, and it isn't an elevated divinity. It's as mundane as the way that we may witness a child or a baby or nature. But there's something powerful to be able to let and allow myself to be a vessel for his immensity, for his passion.
She holds it.
And to be matched in that. I'm a frequency match for it. I am going to say it again, but I'm not afraid.
She's not afraid of it. I think
I'm
it's
not
massive.
intimidated. Yeah. I'm not turned on. I am in a place. Now, neutrality does not mean indifference at all, nor do any of these other words that we're speaking of. There is deep love. There's appreciation.
It's a turn on.
But it's not give to get. It's not bring this to me so that I can have super hot sex and talk about it or whatever storyline. It's not a story. I don't need to complete the story of my man having, breaking things, throwing things, crying, drooling, coming everywhere. It's a moment where I am just willing to see what happens and to be able to hold that. The turn on is immense because the rawness is what I'm here for. I am so much more interested in Eric being exactly where he is today, to give him the permission, energetically speaking, that it is innate in our relationship. It's not a decision that we're making. It's in the relationship foundation to begin with, that this is who both of us are allowed to be, and that the other person is a yes to each other's moment-to-moment truth. Truth is not static. It's ever evolving.
And I think that when you allow it in the back end, you allow it in the front end and throughout our whole life. And I think that's part of it. So what I mean by that is when you allow me to be an animal in sex in the heat of the moment, in those moments, I bring you the animal right at the beginning where I'm just looking at you with just a breath and just an energy and just a frequency, and you just feel it. And that's part of how I contain you and hold you, is through just energetically. It's like if you have two animals, who's the dom? It's just energy that they're communicating. Where are they going? What are they doing? That's how we roll. And that comes because of the fierceness with which we express in our sexuality. And I think so often when I learned first about Tantra, there was this feeling of it being spiritual, as though that's high up here and above and not very fun and not very raw and not very messy. But what I've learned through my experience and through being with you, that Tantra, or I don't really even like that word, but Arosha, the spirit of really what we're going for here, this weaving, is high-low. It's the dark and light. It's the shadow. It's the raw. It's the violent. It's the part of us that we're the killer part. But it's also the part of us that's teary-eyed and crying. How do we bring all of this into it? And we become authors of it. And I'm able to steer it and move it and control it. And I'm not controlled by it. And I think, but I had to go to places where were times where I was controlled by it, and you witnessed that. But now I can control it, and I'm steering it, and I'm moving it, and I'm moving it in, and I'm moving it back. And that's what becomes really attractive. And that's what you really enjoy, and really is the fun. That's where we become artists with our sexuality. And I think with power and with dynamic and with all of this, and it's really fun. And I think,
I wanted to say that it also brought up for me that a big part of Arosha's life and of our journey. Eric has talked so much about this on this podcast, about emotions and the way that we can feel an avoidance of wanting to feel into any human in their anger, in their rage, in their depression, in their despair, in any of these places of even revenge or things that we may bring judgment to. So what it is to be able to feel into the part of us that can be full of positive expectation and relative amounts of practicing patience and all these things that we would think about being on a lighter edge of the scale. If we can see that that density of emotion is not dissimilar to the way that we want to bring the qualities of the beast or this animal hunger or this part of us that just takes and that is gobbly and even greedy and all kinds of things that we may bring judgment to. But we're, as a culture, I see all of us trying to work towards being less judgmental about the emotions that exist inside of the more dense emotions, that they belong inside of all of our relationships, all of our conversations, but they deserve to be in the space of, it's like living a half life if we're only living the joy without the grief. And so same thing here, that we can have a masculine energy, a man who's bringing this respect and consideration and gentleness and caution and great communication, deep reverence for feminine, a lot of respect in that. And it feels incomplete to likely this person who asked this question if this person isn't also bringing this dark ravishment, this beast-like killer. And the killer also makes me feel safe. It makes me feel not safe just because I know he would kill for me. That's true. And also it makes me feel safe because he is asking me to bring my full wholeness to the relationship. And I'm also asking him to bring his entire full wholeness to our relationship.
It gives you permission to be your animal with me.
Most certainly.
Yeah.
And there is no faking this. There is no performing this.
Yeah.
There is practice, and there is a moment where this emergence can feel so liberating that it brings tears. And we don't have to make so much head sense of it. The body really knows, and we can trust that. And yeah.
So I think just to sum it up, and thank you all for being here, but expectation, I think, is the killer of it. I think, how do you not expect anything? How do you let go of expectations? It's the same as orgasm, coming to get an orgasm. It's the same as if you're in any sort of practice. How do you desire the thing while at the same time letting go of the cherished outcome and to move through the fear, not being afraid of him and his animal? And I think that's your own work as well. I think that there's, in closing again, I think there's a real sacred responsibility in this dynamic. If you're going to invite the beast, you need to be able to meet him there, because you could really lose him when he goes there. And that's where I'm a real big proponent of a container in the relationship that holds each other in that. I think that's an important thing to realize, that this is a powerful thing that you're asking from him. Realize that. And I also want to say, I really appreciate everybody for being a part of this season 4. I've been doing the 12 episodes per season. We're going to have 2 special episodes in between before we get to season 5. Please leave some Q&As. Love your questions. We're going to have Rachael back on this. We're going to talk more about sex, more about our relationship, more about our dynamic. Happy to have more edge, whatever you want to talk about. And however this hit you and you want to respond to it, please share that as well. And really, thank you to who did originally share this question. Thank you, Andrew, for inviting me on Infinite Devotion and beginning this whole journey with me. And more than anything, I want to thank Rachael here for not only for our relationship and for all the love that she does, but for inviting me and honoring me to share this all publicly, and wanting that, liking that, being turned on by that, and nudging me forward and supporting me in the background always to really stand in my truth and my authenticity. So thank you all. And thank you, Rachel. And thank you, Arosha.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.